There's breaking news tonight. Another person has just died in the Fulton County Jail. This makes number 8 just this year. It is time, actually it's so far past time, for Attorney General Merrick Garland to use his authority as head of the Department of Justice and shut down that jail immediately. There is no way that the Attorney General doesn't know about all the constitutional violations every single day and every hour inside that jail. The rest of us know about it. And the Attorney General doesn't have to just open the cells and let everyone free, and he knows that. He can quickly transfer all the pretrial detainees from that deplorable, dangerous place to another facility that is consistent with constitutional rights. Think about it. 8 deaths this year, now a new one, confining people in dangerous conditions and in spaces infested with bed bugs and lice. An autopsy of one man who died in his cell showed he was covered in sores and bites from bed bugs and lice. There are also reports of jail structural dangers of walls falling apart, providing shanks, lethal weapons for inmates to hurt the weak or unsuspecting. One public defender who has been practicing law in Fulton County for 12 years says his clients tell him that guards open cell doors to facilitate those attacks with shanks. And there's more. Reports of excessive force by the guards. And by the way, the Fulton County Jail, it's just that. It's a jail. It's not a prison. These detainees are awaiting trial, which means at this very moment they're all presumed innocent of any crime. And frankly, they might be innocent. They just can't make bond. But of course, no prison in this country where people are serving sentences for criminal behavior should have these conditions either, because these conditions in a jail or in a prison are unconstitutional. Fulton County officials, including DA Fani Willis and the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, apparently need to be reminded of the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. It expressly prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Death, lice living in sores, bed bugs, shank-armed prisoners, structural issues are cruel and unusual punishment, unless, of course, you live in Iran, North Korea, Russia, or China, where it's normal, and apparently Fulton County. If Fulton County officials or DA Willis or the Attorney General need help finding that 8th Amendment so they can read it, here's a tip. It's sitting right there in the Constitution. It's right between the 7th Amendment and the 9th Amendment. It's not new. It's been there since 1791. And tonight there's more Fulton County news. Judge Scott McAfee's vacation is over. And I say that sarcastically. You're going to find out why in a moment. But first, Senior Correspondent John Huddy about the notorious Fulton County Jail. John?
Yeah, well, Greta, there's been songs about Rice Street, as it's called, known among locals there in Atlanta. The jail, by the way, is under DOJ, Department of Justice investigation for allegations of inmate abuse, the lack of medical care, and all the other issues you so well outlined in that intro. And Greta, also Fulton County DA Fani Willis has come under fire for investing so much time, money, resources into the ongoing Trump investigation, while hundreds of cases, at least, including many serious cases, murder cases we're talking about, stack up in Fulton County, along with, as you talked about, the bodies clearly at the jail. That said, we're getting reports that one of the co-defendants in the case, in that indictment, Harrison Floyd, has been released on $100,000 bond after spending almost 6 nights in jail. I'm looking at the Fulton County Jail website. It's saying that he hasn't been released yet, but these are according to the number of reports that we're getting at this point. And that may just be a technicality. Often that happens. The defendant's released. They don't update the system. But that said, Floyd, the former director of Black Voices for Trump, as we know, turned himself in Thursday. You're seeing the video there when he approached me during one of my live shots before going into the jail, upset about not being able to arrange bond with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. Before then, sheriff deputies intervened, and I told him, come to the other side of the barricades. Had no idea who the guy was when he first came up to me. That said, at a hearing Friday, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Emily Richardson said that Floyd should be kept in jail due to the previous federal charges against him for allegedly assaulting an FBI agent earlier this year in Maryland, who was attempting to serve Floyd a grand jury subpoena. Judge Richardson said that Floyd was a flight risk and a risk to commit further crimes if released. Floyd, however, said during that hearing he voluntarily surrendered and added, quote, "There is no way I'm a flight risk. I showed up here before the president was here." Now, he was scheduled, Greta, to have a hearing later this week to set conditions for his release. We know that an online legal defense fund already raised over $275,000 for him as well. And some background, he's accused of harassing county elections worker Ruby Freeman and conspiring with co-defendants Stephen Lee and Trevion Kuti, who you see there, their mugshots, to pressure Freeman, according to the indictment, to, quote, reveal information under the threat of incarceration if she did not comply. So Greta, one thing I can tell you is, according to my sources, including some close to former President Trump, there was an effort already underway, along with that online effort, to help Mr. Floyd get out of jail, and specifically going forward with the case and his legal representation. There are certainly many questions and concerns about why Floyd was kept in that infamous and deadly Fulton County jail. Greta.
John, you say that it's under investigation by the feds since middle of July. And let me just point out that there have been 4 people who have died since the middle of July. On July 11th, 19-year-old, July 31st, a 40-year-old, August 11th, a 34-year-old, on August 17th, a 66-year-old. So the idea that it's under investigation, it's like if the house is burning down, you don't study the fire, you put it out with the hose. I mean, they could easily shut down this facility right now and put them in another facility. So I become unglued when they hide behind, we're investigating it. I just become unglued in that. But.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because the allegations that some of these, they go back years. This isn't something that just has come up in the last couple months, Greta. I mean, this has been ongoing for years at that jail. It's notorious. I mean, it's notorious nationwide. For the problems that it's had.
And shame on every constitutional rights aren't maybes; they are requirements, and it's just terrible. John Huddy, thank you.
Great point.
Also breaking tonight, Fulton County DA Fani Willis has filed a motion seeking to fast-track all 19 co-defendants' cases in Georgia with a trial date of October 23rd of this year. The motion comes after former Trump attorney Sidney Powell and co-defendant Kenneth Chesebro both requested a speedy trial. Former Georgia Congressman and former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, Barr, joins me. Congressman, before we even get to the issue of this motion that's been filed about the speedy trial and this guy, how can the Attorney General justify having that jail open tonight with all those people dying, all those constitutional violations, this deplorable situation? I mean, it sounds like the stories I report from Iran jails, Russia jails, jails in China. I mean, how can you justify that?
There's no justification for it. What I've noticed over the years, and I've been practicing criminal defense law for quite a few years, is that these officials, whether they are federal officials, federal judges, prison or jail officials, they simply don't care. They don't care about the individuals. They see them as numbers, as fodder, and this is a prime example of that.
You know what? They ought to be sued.
I beg your pardon?
They ought to be sued for the constitutional violations if they knowingly and willingly. Look, Fani Willis sends people to jail there every single day. The Attorney General of the United States knows about this. His own division is investigating it. All these people have died. He could do something. I mean, there are a lot of people between Fani Willis and the Attorney General who could do something. They just don't care. And these people, not that we should do it in a prison, they're presumed innocent at the moment. They just don't care. They don't care if lice shows up in the sores of dead bodies in the jail. What do they care?
It's a shame, but I've seen it for years, and this is especially true with federal courts because they're somewhat removed from the day-to-day goings-on in these facilities. There have been problems, as you indicated, Greta, with the Fulton County Jail, and I've noticed it and known about it for decades with my criminal defense work down here. It takes a judge like a former federal judge, Marvin Shube, God rest his soul, who actually years ago cared sufficiently about what was going on in some of these jails within his jurisdiction in the Northern District of Georgia, that he did in fact step in. But he unfortunately was the exception rather than the rule.
Well, they could. President Biden could pick up the phone. Attorney General Merrick Garland could pick up the phone. Any federal judge could pick up the phone. It's just, it is so grotesque. But let me now go to why I want to talk to you. The trial court judge has now got to make a decision when to try these cases. Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro want to go. They have a speedy trial right. They want to go speedy. And the rest of the defendants say they need more time. This creates an enormous problem practically for the prosecutor, does it not?
It certainly does. And while on the one hand, I have a little bit of sympathy for the prosecutor having to deal with these conflicts with severance, with speedy trial, with removals and so forth. My sympathy only goes so far because this is a case and a problem of her own making. To indict 19 defendants on numerous conflicting charges and then expect all of this to fall into place magically within the next few months is unrealistic. But on the other hand, the judge certainly needs to get a handle, or this is going to spiral out of control very quickly and raise all manner of additional constitutional issues. So the judge has to step in here, get a handle on it very quickly, and that includes setting a reasonable deadline for severance motions.
But if you look at this from 35,000 feet, you've got, there are, I don't know, 1,000 people in the jail, I don't know, 1,000 constitutional violations going on every minute. And she spends all these resources and her time, rather than complying with the Constitution, she's worried about this case down in Georgia, which mirrors what's going on in Washington, D.C. I mean, she could exercise prosecutorial discretion, say, special counsel, you take care of it in Washington. But instead, while all these people who are suffering in that jail, who got, you know, and I'm going to say it again, lice in their sores and bed bugs in their sores. She's worried about this. Is that really a good use of prosecutorial resources?
Publicity and the desire for publicity on the part of this district attorney and the sheriff also, who has direct supervision over the jail, has driven this case from the very beginning. Not so much the law, not so much exercise of prosecutorial discretion, but the yearning for publicity. And that's what makes what is happening at this jail and the focus by this district attorney on the publicity that she garners from this new case all the more troubling, Greta.
Well, if I were a young lawyer down in Georgia, I'd start filing some civil rights suits against them personally, not just against their jobs, but personally, because I think this is just, you know, beyond. Anyway, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, Bob Barr, thank you, sir.
My pleasure, Greta.